Hello, Ari.
Hi. Hey,
So great to meet you virtually
so
here.
great to meet you. I was just telling you how much your work means to me. I'm very happy to be talking to you and to be doing this.
The feelings are very mutual. I'm a huge admirer of your work. Um, where are you calling from?
I'm in New Mexico right now, in an apartment. I came out here to be near family because I was sort of displaced. I was in California when this all happened, and I'm a New Yorker. So I've just been, for a little while I was hopping from bunker to bunker, and now I'm here, and I'm trying to get back to New York eventually. I hope sooner than later.
So as I mentioned to you, we compiled a series of open-ended questions that we put together, the students and myself. And with your permission, we'll begin.
Let's go.
What was your most vivid memory from childhood?
Oh, wow. Um, well, gosh, my most vivid,
Start with the hard ones.
yeah, that is a rough one. But let's see. I've told one story before, and I guess it's vivid. It's sort of, it's a series of like very kind of, they're in some ways vague impressions, but they're also very, very powerful for me. And I don't know if this is the most powerful moment, but so yeah, when I was very young, I think it was both my parents took me to see Dick Tracy in the movie theater, the Warren Beatty film. And I'm not sure if it was the first film I'd ever seen, but I think it might have been, at least in theaters. And I just remember like a wall of flames and somebody firing a Tommy gun in front of that. And then I just started screaming and running out of the theater. And I think I ran down 10 city blocks with my mother chasing me, just running into the street screaming. And so that made an impression on me. Yes. So I mean, that's sort of, yeah, I mean, I guess that's like a cop-out answer, since like it's not extremely personal, but I figure it's
very personal,
tied to film in some way. So,
who were your early influences when you were coming of age, filmmakers or otherwise?
Well, when I was really first getting into film, Scorsese was probably, like the guy for me more than anybody. But Scorsese and the Coen brothers and Kubrick were all like the first filmmakers I wanted to be, I guess. And then, I mean, there are just so many, I've talked a lot about Bergman and how important he was to me growing up, and how important he still is to me. I would say, I mean, Chris Morris is a British writer, director, comedian whose work like really, really made a pretty profound impression on me when I was younger, and I still keep returning to Chris Morris to get excited.
Is there one particular movie that changed your life, or is that too hard to?
Well, I've talked a lot about this, but The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover was a film I saw when I was like too young, and and that really, like, I feel like it's not hyperbole to say that it like ruined my life for a couple of years. and I've talked about it too much. I need to find new things to talk about. But that really was like a traumatic thing for me, seeing Cook the Thief as Wife Nor Lover and feeling like I was like just somebody was like puking bile into my brain. And it's like somebody else's sickness is like going into me. And now I'm sick. And that somehow not only made an impression on me as like as just a kid who was being, I guess psychologically harmed by something, but also, every now and then I recognize like, oh, like there's a part of me that wants to now do that to other people, to like put images in people's heads that maybe are hard to contend with, or, are upsetting. And it's all very sick and, not very healthy, but that was a film that really, really made a huge impression on me, for better or worse.
Do you feel your work is autobiographical in some sense?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Probably more than I will ever publicly admit to. And this is probably the closest I'll come. But everything I've written is coming from some desperate place. And usually when I write something that doesn't feel like it's answering those like needs, I tend to lose interest, and those movies don't really end up getting made or pursued. But I try to pass everything through a dense enough filter that you can't really see where exactly it's actually coming from. And then by the time you end up, on set making the film, it's less therapeutic, and it really just becomes a matter of executing something. So I often like the writing of something is very therapeutic and very, very, I feel as though I'm like purging something, and then I end up making the film, and it's, I'm asked very often, like, is it therapeutic to make the film? And it's never, no, it's always just a nightmare of trying to achieve something, and you're trying to get as close as possible to like something that's in your head. And that is what it is. It's just, it's kind of like working blind, because practically it's so hard to make a film because you're working with hundreds of people and the clock is hanging over you, and there's so many things that go wrong every day. And then you get back into the editing room, and then I usually have like a series of week-long panic attacks where I feel like I can't release this, and I can't like face people maybe seeing parallels, or people seeing reflections of themselves, or feeling that I've exploited something in some way, and I just want to like destroy what I've done and just get out of it.
This leads nicely into the next question, which is, what is your very least favorite part of the artistic process? Sounds like maybe most of it, but
my least
favorite part of the cinematic process.
Well, yeah, it's pre-production is in some ways my favorite. It feels like summer camp, and you're working with a bunch of people, and you're all kind of, it's just fun. You're getting to know people. You're building things up, and it's really great. It's stressful, but it's manageable stress. And then shooting is definitely the worst part. And there are like peaks every day, and those peaks are usually when finally achieve something, when like you're looking at the monitor and like you got it and you can move on. But then immediately when you've got it, there's that rush of knowing you have it and then realizing, oh, but now there's the next thing that we have to like set up. And I don't know. I'm not like the most, I guess I'm sort of an inward guy. I'm not like, I'm not the most extroverted guy. So like it always takes energy. And so, yes, so shooting is very hard. Shooting Midsommar was very hard because we were in another country and we didn't have enough money and we didn't have enough time and we were relying on daylight every day, and the weather was terrible and the clouds always came out exactly when they weren't supposed to. And so continuity was, even just the question of continuity was a nightmare because we didn't know what was going to cut together. I'm still amazed that the movie is coherent at all. But yeah, anyway, shooting is the hardest. Shooting is the worst. It's my least favorite part. But also, but then when it's over, I end up kind of feeling nostalgic about it, and then I end up putting like a gloss on all the memories, and now I'm sure in a year, the experience of shooting Midsommar would just be something I remember only fondly. It's already happened with Hereditary, and I know that that's not what it was. I know that was a nightmare too.
Do you enjoy the collaborative process generally?
I really love collaborating with people, and I've been very lucky in that most of my collaborators have been just people I love, and I would say all the films I've made are in so many ways they're like, just it's a series of compromises that have been made, but they're also all so much bigger and better and more expansive than what I could have done on my own. And I've been really lucky to work with amazing production designers, and my cinematographer is one of my best friends, and he's also just like a huge support system on everything I've done, and there's like an intimacy that's like achieved somehow in the making of these films that goes beyond a lot of what I've experienced otherwise, because you're all like in the shit together. And so, I think that's part of the joy of filmmaking is that you're sort of living with a makeshift family for a time, and you're all pursuing the same thing, and you're all climbing the same mountain, and so of course, sometimes it's a nightmare working with other people, but usually it's a joy. And I at least on the last two features, the only two features so far, I fell into pretty serious like little depression after shooting both films, just because you get so close with these people and you love them, and you've been through something, and it's it's so intense that you kind of forget to appreciate it or enjoy it at any given point, and then it's over and it's very abrupt. Like the last day of shooting is the last day, and then you have a wrap party, and then everybody goes back to their lives, and some of these people you might never see again, but we're so close for a few months. So I do very much like the collaborative process.
What do you see as the central themes and preoccupations in your work?
I don't know. I mean, I can answer that, and I often fall into the trap of answering questions like that. But I feel as though I'm falling into a trap, and that it's not my job to
hazard a guess.
determine what those are. Yeah, it's hazardous. It's always hazardous. There are things I end up realizing. There are themes I end up realizing are prevalent, like grief. Grief is sort of a theme that's been, I guess, pervasive. And the next thing that I'm working on right now, that will probably be the next feature if anybody ever shoots a movie again, is also dealing with questions about grief, even though it's a comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's an absurd, very, 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 very stupid comedy.
Oh. Let's see if he comes back. Ari.
I
lost you there for a second. Again.
Oh, you did? Where did you lose me?
Very stupid comedy.
Right, which it's been churning for like 6 years, and I hope I get to make it. It's been on the back burner for a while, but
there is a relationship between horror and humor that I think your films explore.
I mean, I agree that there is a relationship between horror and humor, especially in that they both kind of deal with build up and payoff, right? There's in horror, you're building suspense towards some sort of revelation, and with comedy, it's set up and then punchline. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All I can say about that is that I feel that that anything, like any film, book, whatever, without humor is time wasted.
Do you feel there's a relationship between violence and catharsis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if I can. I mean, for me, yeah, it's. I can't really extricate one from the other. Do I have anything more to say? I feel like I'll be embarrassed by anything I add to that, but yes, in caps.
How about your thoughts about themes concerning religion and cults that play through your work?
I mean, I'll begin just by saying that by the time I was given the money to direct Hereditary, I had written 10 feature scripts, just trying to get anything going. And Hereditary and Midsommar were the only two films that had that in them.
Interesting.
And so I think it feels more pervasive to other people than it does to me, although I'm aware of it. And I guess both films are very much about family and about like the trap of family, and I don't know. They're like both like in some ways I guess they're like anti-family, and just I guess just cults felt like very, very appropriate metaphors that just like worked for whatever I was doing in those two films. But again, I I'm hesitant to expound beyond that, which is very. I'm sure it's very dissatisfying listening to this conversation. But
who's your imagined audience, if you have one?
An imagined audience.
Think about, like, as you're making a film or after it's made.
I guess it's me. I guess I'm just trying to satisfy myself and trying to remember what upsets me in other work, like, by which I mean like what bothers me, like what I don't like. I'm trying to remember, like, you know, where I've drawn lines for other work, and because it's very easy to like lose those lines when you're doing something yourself. And then, I mean, this isn't quite what you're asking, but whenever I have to do talks like this, or, you know, when the films come out and then I do Q&As after the screenings, I have a very hard time doing them because I'm just imagining which people in the audience think I'm an asshole and which people in the audience hated the movie, and how obnoxious it would be to like listen to me talk about it. And so I just don't want to say anything because I can only think about them, and it's all a projection.
That's a great answer.
And so I guess that's just, I guess I'm just trying to like avoid I'm just trying to avoid traps all the time. But I don't know. That's also, there's something disingenuous about that as well, but I guess I'll just let it stand. Yeah.
Is there what movies make you cry, or which movies have made you cry?
It's not hard to make me cry, actually. Sometimes I really resent it. Sometimes I feel like I got socked in the gut and like somebody took something from me without earning it, and I'm always upset about that. Like I'm an easy target for like a tearjerker, but there are certain films that make me cry every time. Recently, Andrew Hay made a film called 45 Years. I've talked about this a lot, but that film.
I love that movie.
Me too. It's really, I've seen it so many times now. I've seen it maybe 10 times. And there's just, at the very end of the film, there's a cut to black that's so like perfectly timed. And the entire film has been building towards this like expression on Charlotte Rampling's face, which is like so loaded with meaning. And every time it cuts to black, I just start weeping. It's a very like cathartic release. I don't know. I'm pretty amazed by that, and I don't feel resentful whenever I cry watching that one. I feel that film has earned it. You know, I remember seeing The New World in theaters and being like destroyed by that, like really, really devastated, and then feeling really grateful for how destroyed I felt. You know, I mean, but then the ending of Defending Your Life makes me cry. When Albert Brooks jumps out of the bus and gets into Meryl Streep's bus, that makes me cry. I love that. Trying to think about it.
It's interesting. Ben Stiller, who did pop up, mentioned Albert Brooks as well as.
Oh, really?
Great.
Yeah, I love Albert Brooks so much. Yeah, he's the greatest. Modern Romance, Real Life, Lost in America, and Defending Your Life. Like that run is pretty incredible. I love Mother too, but it's not quite on the same. It's not. Those four are just beyond the beyond. Yeah.
What is your greatest fear?
There's so many. How do I choose? I guess like I guess it's maybe just the people closest to me like changing or turning on me. That's something that like I guess dictates a lot of my behavior as well. And just like loss of quality of life. I guess that's I spend a lot of time. I waste a lot of time worrying about that.
So I have one last question, and then if you have time, we'll open it up to students. What advice would you give students in this moment of peril?
Well, I don't know what advice I can give. Like this is an unprecedented time. This is crazy. I know that I know that I've been getting like, it, I'm either, I go from being like galvanized by the whole, Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the plague. And then I swing from that to then feeling like, well, actually, Shakespeare wrote like what 39 plays, so he was probably writing anyway. And I don't think that there should be any pressure on anybody to be productive right now. We're living through history, and so maybe just let's do that and get through it. And but one thing that I can say is that everything has slowed down, and I have been reading more than I was, which has been really nice. And there's something liberating about the fact that we're all in the same situation where, I know a lot of people who got really screwed by this thing beyond people who died. And I'm so lucky because I didn't really have anything going, and my life hasn't really changed beyond the way that it's changed for everybody. So I'm so fortunate that I just feel like I can't really speak to anything because it's kind of gross how fortunate I am. And I had friends who were a week away from. I had one friend who was a week away from shooting a massive, massive movie. And I can't imagine how, the frustration and like the grief of just, being ready to go and then having that cut down. And then that, of course, who cares about that? And, when you have people losing their parents and people losing their husband and wives, I don't know. It's all becoming mush now. I have no advice except just hang in there, and it sucks.
I think that's great and beautifully said. We're going to go to questions now. First one's from Elizabeth.
Okay. Hopefully my internet cooperates. So do you hear me? Is this working?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for being here. I feel like this question might make you feel put on the spot. You've been very careful about avoiding elaborating on some stuff, but I have to ask. You talked about, the sensation of feeling perhaps like manipulated, almost when some films make you induce like tears, which is something I can relate to. But can you talk more about maybe like your theories for that motivation of wanting to induce this like sensation of being like infected or discomfort through images? Because I think it's something I relate to a lot, but I find myself feeling like worried or guilty often. Like what is my motivation for wanting to induce that in people? Like I don't know if you could expand more on what you think maybe that impulse is as an artist.
Yeah. Well, I find that I'm often writing the stuff that I end up making, or that I end up committing to making, when I'm in crisis and when I'm really working through something, whatever it is that feels immediate and feels, it feels like, I guess, like whenever writing feels more like an act of survival than like, you know, than me practicing some like craft or something. And so part of it is me trying to relay whatever that feeling was that was driving me through the writing process, and wanting to have it feel that like just capture the desperation and the immediacy of whatever was happening while I was writing. And then I also, I guess I just for me, image making is what is like the first thing that draws me to film making. I feel like that's what I'm most passionate about. I love getting into sound, and I love playing with cuts, and I love working with actors, but really in the end, like what, you know, I need to have at least like 5 or so images that are just burning in me to the point that I have this kind of constant engine that gets me through the making of a film, because it's a nightmare making a film. It's a joy, but it's very hard. And it's very hard too, because unless you're editing while you're making the film, like somebody like Soderbergh, who I know is shooting and cutting his own films, and he's incredible. I don't know anybody like Soderbergh, and he's a hero of mine. Just knowing his process. But unless you're cutting while you're making the film, which I'm not doing, I can't even really watch dailies because I need to think about tomorrow, not today, or like not what I just did. Then you don't know what's going to work, and some things don't work. Some really essential scenes end up on the cutting room floor, just because you didn't get them right, not because the scenes don't need to be there, and you have to figure out a way to.
Hopefully you'll come back. There's so many more questions to ask him.
And getting it right. And so for me, and maybe this comes from having watched films when I was too young that like really disturbed me and impacted me, and in negative ways. Like Carrie was another film that I just was not ready for Carrie. It really fucked with me. And there were images in Carrie that just penetrated in a way that I wasn't happy about. And I don't know. I just, the hope for me is always, I want to make something that like stays with you. I want to like put images in your head that you can't easily dismiss, or that you can't move immediately away from. I'm not saying that I'm doing that. I'm not saying that that's something I'm achieving. I just know that that's something that's a goal that I've been aware of, at least with these last 2 films, and with a lot of the shorts that I was making beforehand, but really with these last 2.
Nabil, where are you?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hi, Ari. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us. I was wondering if maybe you could talk about, like, what do you think that things that horror as a genre can offer narrative? Or, like, I guess, like, how do you find, like, what are the special qualities, I guess, of horror as a genre that it offers narrative versus other genres of film that maybe attracted you to it?
Well, I feel like when horror is done right, one, it gets me excited about the medium as a whole, because you're really like you're really playing with all the tools, sound and image and editing, performance, music. I mean, for me, it's also been a matter of like kind of pulling back on certain things that I feel are typically overexploited. But really, you know, I mean, Hereditary, when I first started writing it, was not a horror movie. It was a family drama, and it was just like so fucking punishingly bleak. And I liked it, but I just knew like the audience for this thing was really limited, and that's fine. But it was also just too close to home, and I was really like, it was just painful to write it because I just knew I could never make this thing. And then it occurred to me to start redeveloping it as a horror movie, and suddenly all the things that felt like all the things that served as deterrents for me as I was writing it suddenly became like virtues, because it is ultimately, horror is a genre that it's a genre where you can really like kind of tunnel into really ugly things and start and just and I think it rewards people who don't shy away from the things that otherwise in any other genre, you know, it'll turn off just about everybody else, or, you know, everybody in the audience. I mean, I'm somebody who, I'm like allergic to like the bittersweet ending and all the, I mean, I'm somebody who, I just have no patience for half measures, I guess. And I have found that I've been able to sort of tell these stories that I want to tell without compromising, and without compromising in ways that I would feel are compromises. Other people might think I've compromised left and right. And that somehow the audience is still kind of there for it. And so in that way, I'm really grateful to the horror genre. And I'm you know, I've been kind of anxious to like leave it only for like the time being. But I recognize that for me, it's been kind of perfect.
Dylan.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. It's just a delight. I have a whole bunch of questions for you, but I feel like I should ask the most straightforward one. I think, well, I had a similar reaction that you had to Dick Tracy when I first heard the Hacks and Cloak. And I wonder about your relationship with him, because that movie feels like it's so separate from his world, but it like really, I don't know, I feel like it really made something different out of both things, having him there.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite favorite things about making these films has been working with the composers, working with Colin Stetson on Hereditary, and working with Bobby, aka Bobby Krillick, aka the Hacks and Cloak, on Midsommar. Also because these were people who I just loved listening to before I was making films, and I reached out to them hoping that they would be interested in scoring, and they both were, very luckily. Like they were the first people I went to for both films. So I feel very fortunate to have worked with them. And Bobby, I mean, Bobby is just a great guy. So working with him was just just fun. But, and I think that the music he's like known for, like his self-titled album and Excavation, that actually felt appropriate to me while I was writing Midsommar. Just him without really his music not deviating from what he actually usually does. And then as I was making the film, and it occurred to me like this really, really, really is a fairy tale more than anything. It's not. I stopped seeing it as a horror film at all, despite the macabre stuff. It just felt like this really needs like the score needs to be romantic and lush and like kind of sentimental, and that for me was what the ending. If it didn't feel kind of romantic and swelling and and kind of ecstatic, then it wasn't going to work at all. And it took a while to find it. Colin Stetson, had a really great thing going where we were emailing each other the entire way through. So he would send me a cue and I would just kind of send him back notes. And that really worked. We were able to really, we were speaking the same language over email. Nothing else really needed to happen. We never worked in person. And that was not working with Bobby. And it was kind of scary because the emailing was just not working and we were not on the same page. And so I flew out there, hoping that maybe we could develop a rapport in person. And in the first 2 days of working together, with me talking to him and him kind of scoring in the room, that final cue, which is, I think it's either just under 10 minutes or just over 10 minutes, 2 days that was finished. It was the first thing we did. And I found that, we had just the most amazing rapport in person together. And that score happened so quickly, just together. It's all him, but just we were able to communicate so well in person. I'm not sure if that's what the question was, but ultimately that's what the process was, and it was really a joy. And I'm excited to hear anything Bobby does at any time. Same with Colin. But I'm very pleased with both of those scores. And I feel honored to have worked with both of those artists.
Jane.
Hi, Ari. When you write a screenplay, do you always have the ending in mind, or is it always evolving?
Do I always have the screenplay in mind when I'm?
No, sorry, the ending of the screenplay. Do you always have it in mind, or is it always evolving as you're writing?
Midsommar, the ending was always very clear. The ending was like the first thing that occurred to me. Hereditary, there was an epilogue in Hereditary that I had to like chop out, and kind of not so much chop out as like I had the ending of the film as it is now sort of absorbed an epilogue that was there from the beginning. And I'm so glad I did that. A lot of people hate that ending, but I'm happy with it. The next thing I'm doing, the ending was very clear from the beginning. Yeah, I outlined very heavily, so by the time I'm actually writing the script, everything's pretty much set. Endings are really important. I really try to, and usually having like a vivid ending in mind is what, again, kind of it's an engine for me to get through the writing of the script, and then And then I try to have an image beyond just like some sort of narrative resolution. And I'm sorry, I'm actually going to run over here and grab a charger and then sit over here and plug my computer. I'll be right back.
We have a few more questions.
All right. Okay.
Just a few more questions. Jack? Are you there? Jack?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious about the dream scene in Hereditary. Just the way that you captured what it's like to be in a dream kind of blew my mind when I watched that. And I'm just curious about what it was like when you first had the idea for that scene, and how the idea developed. Like if it was
I'm gonna cut you off. I'm really sorry. You actually froze for like 30 seconds for me, and I did not hear the first part of your question. Please ask that again.
Okay, my bad. So I'm a huge fan, first of all. So I'm curious about the Annie's dream scene in Hereditary. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So I was just completely blown away by how perfectly that captures like how weird it is to be in a dream, like the pacing of it and everything. And I was just curious what it was like when you first had that idea and how it developed. Like if it developed quickly, or if you had the entire thing in your head, or if it was something you were kind of chasing. And then how did you actually execute that scene on set with, the crew and everyone, and Tony Collette and Alex Wolff? Like, how did you get it that perfect? I'm just curious.
Well, thank you. That's okay. So I remember when I first wrote that scene, the idea was, and it was written in. It was written into the script that there would be no room tone.
Yeah.
That it was going to be utterly silent, which is very. I just know that when you take room tone out of the theater, it's very uncomfortable because you just have this theater sound. It's like there's no environment anymore in the movie. And that was something I was excited about trying. I didn't know if it was going to work, and luckily it just kind of worked right away. The sound design team was like, we don't think it's going to work, and then we just tried and it worked. So we just did that. And that went a long way, just kind of creating that mood. And then as far as just doing it on set, I think the only direction I gave the actors was drag out every silence between each line as far as you comfortably can. So just don't speak until it's unbearable to not say your line. And then we took out a lot of those silences in the cut because they were interminable. But that's really those I guess were the prime ingredients of that scene. But I'm glad you're mentioning it, because I was really pleased with how it came out.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked for you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Annie?
Hi. It's frozen.
Oh, he's frozen. Oh, geez. Okay. Well, we're very close. Let's see if he comes back. There he is.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
Ari, thank you so much for sharing Really appreciate it. So I'm interested in your commitment to subversion. I'm curious to hear more about your thoughts on taboo, and what are some taboos that interest you, or do you wish were addressed more in the arts / life?
I can't. I don't know if I can address like taboos. I wish were being addressed. You know, more often in the arts. I guess I've always been excited by work that is in some way transgressive. Although there's nothing worse than like some self-conscious like enfant terrible who's just, you know, shattering taboos for the sake of it. That's really like that's also like something that I can't stand, and something that I'm always worried I'm inadvertently doing or being. I don't know. I mean, God. I guess I'm just excited by the idea of not doing the done thing and kind of finding a way to I mean, I don't know. And I don't know. I really don't feel that I'm doing anything particularly original or that I'm like on my own path. I mean, even for instance, in Hereditary, I was very excited about, you know, taking off a 12-year-old girl's head 30 minutes into the movie. Like, that was very exciting to me. But that's not like, but that comes from me having seen Psycho and being really excited by what Psycho did. And so, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, for me, what's exciting about working in genre is the idea of breathing like fresh life into a dead horse and finding ways to like to avoid cliches while at the same time like honoring certain traditions. And I think it's really just, and then of course for me genre is also a way of veiling personal stuff and there's a structure that exists for me that kind of allows me to hang very messy feelings in sort of an organized way. God, I'm not answering anything. I'm just talking like an asshole. I don't know. So that's there. I'm not sure if I've like given you some sort of. I'm not sure if I've given you anything there, but that's.
Sorry, if a follow-up is possible. I'm curious if you think concerned if that like if the veil was lifted, it would like take away from the impact of your work.
The veil, what?
Well, like the veil of whatever's veiling the sort of personal stuff.
No, if anything, the work would probably be more impactful, but then I would be vulnerable. So ultimately it's all armor, and it's so that I can make as full-bodied a statement as I can without being completely paralyzed by guilt and shame and fear. So if anything, the movies would probably be better without all the veiling. But I would die.
I know we're running out of time, but we do have two more questions. Are you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, great. So, Mickey.
Hi, Ari, thank you for being here. You kind of alluded to this in the last question, but I guess I was wondering, what do you see as the function and or benefit of gore within films?
Well, first of all, there's like an aesthetic beauty potentially. And I guess I'm thinking a little bit about the question about violence and catharsis. And like, if you're gonna kill somebody in your movie, or you might as well make it good. But at the same time, to like, I guess maybe slightly remove the tongue from the cheek, you might as well make it impactful. And for instance, I mean, I can't talk about it broadly because I'm just going to just disappear in my own ass. But I feel that so specifically, I could point to showing Charlie's head on the side of the road in Hereditary. And that, her head comes off in one scene, or, but it's so quick that hopefully the audience is almost not even sure if they saw what they thought they saw. And there's like a restraint to that maybe is like a relief to people, and also kind of allows them to feel the impact without being grossed out. But then that also, by hopefully showing some restraint in that scene, the hope was that people would kind of let their guard down to a degree that they're not even aware of. And then the next morning, when you hear the mother's screams and her panicking and freaking out, hopefully that starts to penetrate on some visceral level. And then by showing the girl's head, the idea was, I want the audience to come as close to feeling what the family is feeling, like as far as like the horror of this incident and how just unbearable this is, as I can. And ultimately it's like a fool's errand, because it's their daughter, and they've, and their whole life is wrapped up in her, and you've been watching it for 30 minutes and she's kind of a creepy kid. But for me, it's I want to make it count, and so I want it to. Ultimately, I want the violence to penetrate, and I want it to bother people, because violence is horrible, and it reverberates, and then I don't know. There's just, our bodies are so vulnerable, and then we die, and then they rot, and there's something. I think we spend our entire lives like kind of trying to distract ourselves from just how vulnerable we are, and so I don't know. Like I just there's something appealing to me about reminding everybody that everything is finite and precarious, and we're really just decaying. What Well, is that the answer I want to give? Anyway, that's the answer I gave you.
Last question is from Dawn.
Hi, Ari.
Hi.
I was wondering, I've Googled all over for this answer, and this is a short question. And I was wondering if your father has seen The Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
Yeah, he has.
What does he think about it? What does he say? What did you say when you showed it to him? Or did he see it on his own?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it was my thesis film at grad school at AFI. And so, yeah, I mean, I showed him my thesis, and yeah, he liked it. I mean, I think his response was, I think the first time he saw it, he just said, "Too weird, Ari, too weird, too weird." You know, I don't know. But I think it's grown on him. But you know, I feel like there have been much more. There have been things in my films that I've been like so much more worried about as far as people close to me seeing them.
Is there anything that you wanted to put into a film that the studio wouldn't let you?
No. I had to fight with not fight, but there was a long back and forth with the MPAA about Midsommar. No, I mean, I've been lucky. I've been working with A24, and they're very supportive of their filmmakers. They're great. They're as great as everybody thinks they are.
Can you be more specific about the Midsommar? Which part were you fighting for?
It was the sex temple stuff. There's a lot of the director's cut has like the full sex temple scene. And we had to it was just a lot of trimming. It's a lot of trimming. And then they also were pushing back on the Atta Stupa scene, the jumping off the cliffs and the demolishing the old man's head. But no, I haven't really. I mean, I have stories that I won't tell about Hereditary that don't have to do with A24, but that were horrible. But I won't tell them because it's just too messy. But I will say that that the issues I've had dealing with like the studio with as far as like cuts are concerned are all my fault. Midsommar's like first cut was about 4 hours long. It was too long. I wasn't being careful enough about just timing scenes, and so it was very hard to get that to 2.5 hours. For many months, I didn't think that there was any possibility that I would ever get it below 3 hours. So it was a very painful process of cutting things that I thought the movie needed, that I thought were important for the characters, were important for the world, were important for, and I still think that they were important. I'm not, you know, the theatrical cut of Hereditary of Midsommar is my, you know, I like that's my cut. I approve that cut. I did that with my editor, Luke Johnston. But that was very painful, was getting it to a releasable length. And even at 2.5 hours, it's arguable that the movie just shouldn't be even that long, you know. But it is at minimum. Yeah, so that's been the hardest thing. But ultimately, it comes down to I made a movie that was too long. And I did the same thing with Hereditary. That was too long too. The first cut of Hereditary was 3 hours. I mean, usually assemblies are much, much longer. But I'm not sure how typical it is that you end up cutting 40 scenes from a movie or 30 scenes from a movie. And that's pretty much what happened with both films. So hopefully I've learned my lesson. I probably haven't.
So Ari, thank you so much. This has been so extraordinary. I want to ask Lindsay to turn on the audio and ask all the students to turn their screens on, so we can all thank you and give you a round of applause for your.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ari.